Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to offer some thoughts on the future of payments. What are the drivers? What are the key innovations that we are currently seeing? Wolfgang already mentioned the ERBB, the Euro Retail Payments Board, where we indeed try to foster these innovative developments, and I would indeed wish to focus afterwards on two of the initiatives where we are particularly active and which currently drive the debate, which is, as you already mentioned, instant payment and payment initiation services. But let me first have a bit of a look on what changes we are seeing in the ecosystem currently. So when we look at the classical payment instruments being check, credit transfer, direct debit, cards, we see quite some innovative solutions. So the underlying payment instruments, they do not change. I mean, we have not seen any change in the underlying instrument, but what we see is that the solutions that are offered on top of these instruments, they become more and more diversified, innovative, and this is where strong competition currently is building up on. Most of the innovations, they have often been built on cards, credit card solutions, wallets, but we also expect, particularly with the advent of instant payment, many innovative solutions coming out of the instant payment space. Hand in hand with that, we see also the speeding up of processes. We see that in everyday life, whether it's the delivery of goods, whether it's sending of messages. This is more and more becoming a trend of becoming real time. And we also see that need establishing in the payments sphere, where payments, let's say the settlement times become shorter and shorter, and we clearly see around the globe also a trend towards real-time payments. Also, the access channels change from initially, I would say, physical paper via computer. Now, I think the big device that is used for the initiation of payments or the conduct of payment services, particularly in the retail space, is mobile. We also see a change in the landscape. It's no longer just the banks offering the services, but we have many providers, be it specialized banks, be it companies that specialize on specific products, innovative products that they offer, so-called fintechs, and that poses certainly also some challenges, but offers ample of room for innovation and competition. Looking at the Euro Retail Payments Board as one of, I would say, the governance structures driving Euro Retail Payments, we work in the system where we have the Commission on the one hand driving the legislative process. The Euro system has the mandate on the one hand to operate safely and efficiently payment systems, but also foster, let's say, cooperation amongst market participants. That is what we call the catalyst role, and that is where the ERPB, the Euro Retail Payments Board, is active at strategic level in order to discuss with relevant parties, both from the supply as well as the demand side, in order to foster dialogue, achieve innovation, and come to a consensus on how we bring the Euro payments market forward. A key initiative in that context has been instant payment. I mentioned that this is something we are seeing around the globe developing, and the ERPB has identified a need for instant payment solutions already 3 years ago. There was an initial discussion, and at the end of 2015, a mandate was given then to the EPC to develop a scheme based on credit transfer, SCT Inst, where the crediting of the credit transfer would happen within 10 seconds, credited on the account of the beneficiary so that you can actually see the amount in your account. It's not a guarantee or a notification, but it is actually in your account. That is offered on a 24/7, 365 basis throughout the entire SEPA universe. There was an initial, or there is the initial upper limit, which is defined in the scheme as 15,000 euro, but that can be adapted over time, and individual communities can also adapt this threshold if their community wishes so. Besides this scheme layer, which is in our pyramid the second layer, where you define the rules, the general rules according to which everybody abides by doing this business, on the top of the pyramid we have the end-user solutions, which banks provide to their customers, and where true competition will then emerge, where you as a customer can then choose who offers the best product that you wish to use for doing such instant payments. Our work, however, focuses more on the layers below, what Wolfgang mentioned, the plumbing. So plumbing indeed today becomes more attractive than it maybe used to be in the past, because it's clear that this is something which, if done properly, can save you quite an amount of cost. I don't speak of revenue, I speak of reduction of cost. Because, I mean, to what extent, I mean, particularly retail clients are ready to pay for retail services, this is another dimension. And we have focused our work on trying to make sure that we have an integrated market also in the clearing as well as in the settlement layer. We have therefore started work on the side of the ECB with the ACHs and the banking industry to make sure that the clearing process that is underneath the actual transactions in order to facilitate clearing and settlement, that this is being done in an integrated market so that we achieve integration and do not risk the benefits that we have achieved with SEPA. We have defined 3 conditions together and agreed on that together, that we use a single settlement procedure, we use a single risk management model, and we have a common, or we aim at a common access policy with the overarching objective of achieving interoperability and pan-European reach. Because what we want to achieve is that you can easily reach any account in Europe from the account that you start the transaction from. The first 2 conditions we have easily agreed, and based on that we have then in the Eurosystem built a settlement procedure or adapted our settlement procedure so that ACHs can use that. There is also a technical interoperability framework that has been established by the clearing industry, but so far we have not seen too much of an evidence, if any, when it comes to interoperability between ACHs. And the risk that this bears is that we see developments in national communities which may be slightly divergent from other national communities, which bears the risk of fragmentation and also prohibits pan-European reach, because it is very difficult then to reach an account outside your country. And in order to ensure this overarching objective of pan-European reachability, we have proposed from the side of the Eurosystem a settlement solution, not a clearing solution, but a settlement solution, which is called Target Instant Payment Settlement, TIPS in short terms, where central bank money settlement will be available 24/7, 365. And given that all 4,500 banks in Europe have an account in Target, that should also facilitate pan-European reach if you participate in that TIPS system. We are currently in an investigation phase, which does not mean that we are doing it. We are exploring the interest in the market. We have launched a public consultation, and we have defined the user requirements together with market participants. We are conducting a business case analysis, and in summer this year we go back to our governance body, the Governing Council, who will then decide whether that service will be offered. Again, I mean, the overarching objective for that is the efficiency and integration of the market, where it was not entirely clear for us, or we had doubts whether the market on its own would achieve that. So that was basically the reason for tips to be provided. The second initiative where I would like to speak a bit about is payment initiation services. This is also, I think, the focus of the next panel. This maybe just, I mean, to very briefly, I mean, explain what this is about. The predominant case, I would say, is the transaction that supports an e-commerce transaction. It can also be used for corporate transactions, but the predominant case, I guess, is in the e-commerce space, where a consumer over the internet buys some goods, employs a third-party provider who goes to the bank of the consumer to initiate the payment that will then be transferred to the bank of the merchant, who, upon the confirmation of that, or of the confirmation of the third-party provider, will then release the goods. This is a service which has been defined in the Payment Services Directive 2, PSD2, and the rules for accessing the account are also enshrined in the legislation. There, in the legislation, the framework is provided for authorization and supervision of the TPPs, and on the other hand also for the mandate for banks to grant access to such TPPs in order to be able to provide the service. So PSD2 has been adopted and has to be transposed by January next year into national legislation, and EBA, the European Banking Authority, has submitted the regulatory technical standards on authentication and communication last month. In the Euro retail, so this sets, I would say, the legal and regulatory framework. And within this regulatory framework, I mean, questions have emerged in the Euro Retail Payments Board to what extent the harmonized provision of payment initiation services will be possible, particularly in a cross-border context, since the framework, including the RTS, defines the requirements, but is not as detailed as to avoid that there might be strongly divergent solutions by the different players in the market. Imagine that we have, as I mentioned, 4,500 banks. If every bank would use or would offer a different interface, it would be very difficult, I mean, to access and provide the service and access banks via this multiplicity of interfaces. So that's why the ERBB has established a working group that should look into a common set of technical, operational, and business requirements for the development of an integrated market in payment initiation services. That is the mandate for these working groups, or for this working group, in order to come up or provide the requirements for a standardized interface and also a harmonized set of operational and business rules, according to which, if that is agreed amongst market participants, these market participants then can provide integrated services for Europe. Again, the objective being that we try to avoid fragmentation in this emerging market. We expect an initial report of that working group in June for the next ERPB meeting, and then we will have to see how close market participants have come in their elaborations, and whether that serves as a good basis for the provision of such services in an integrated market. Let me conclude. As mentioned at the beginning, and as Wolfgang already mentioned, we see quite some change in the retail payments landscape. And I think, we have to tackle these changes together in a cooperative manner. That's why, let's say, the ERPB can play, I think, a crucial role in that, because we bring the demand and the supply side together. We have all relevant parties around the table at the executive level in order to foster a consensus which can then serve as the basis for the cooperation upon which, let's say, competition in that market can work. The two examples I have given, instant payments and payment initiation services, I think are good examples where we can see that the cooperative approach can work or has to work. For instant payments, I think we have seen that with the development of the scheme, where we now have the scheme, and banks are in the process of developing their solutions. We are in the process of developing the clearing and settlement level accordingly, and I'm confident that we will achieve that progress also in the context of payment initiation services. Thank you very much for your attention.